Okay, wait a second. Yeah, here we are. Oh. There. I hope you can all see the screen. It's an education table. The idea is that we as the staff of the faculty want input from you, the students, about our curriculum, in particular our bachelor curriculum. Although we've always got to think of the bachelor in relationship to the master. So really, we want your feedback about the whole curriculum. That's what today is all about. And the game rule that I want to impose on this discussion is really quite an old-fashioned one. You know, behave as if you yourself were king or queen, that you could, as in the fairy stories, determine everything and redesign our curriculum, our bachelor program, as you would like to see it. That's really all there is to it here. But of course, you need a little bit of a guideline as to, well, what's the landscape going to look like, you know, for that redesigning to appear in. And there are a number of changes imposed upon us by the university, things that we cannot change, things that we cannot alter. And one of them is, and this was quite a radical change, which actually caused the whole process to be delayed by another year, is the change that they have agreed to increase the size of our major from 95 ECTS, and remember one ECTS is about 128 hours of studying by the student, right? From 95 ECTS to no less than 125 ECTS. That's an increase of 30 ECTS, which is almost half a year extra time that we get to program for the major. Now that extra time needs to be filled with stuff. How are we going to fill it? How are we going to do this? One of the ways that the space was created was by moving the use learning lines, as you all know them, and maybe you doubtlessly have your own opinion about what a youth learning line is or what it's like and how you've experienced it, how useful it might be. And you will all have your own opinion about that. But they have now been moved to the elective space. So they are no longer going to be mandatory. The faculty who services most of the youth learning lines, the faculty of EA and ES, they believe and are confident enough that their youth learning lines are so good that lots of people will choose them anyway. So that's a good thing. That frees up an enormous amount of space for us. So we're going to keep about 45 ECTS of elective space, and we are going to keep use ethics in first year, which is there already, right? And we're going to introduce something called a youth advanced subject in third year, which will be devoted to students studying business models, sustainable economies, any sort of subject that tries to create a link between technology, society, and enterprise. Then another few game rules that have been imposed upon us are the fact that we want to increase the amount of challenge-based learning over the university as a whole. Now, many of our projects already look a little like challenge-based learning projects. So we as a faculty won't have too much of a problem adapting our curriculum to fit that notion of challenge-based learning. We also want to have students in the lead, which essentially means that the student should be given a lot of freedom, sometimes perhaps even a worrying amount, to determine what their curriculum should look like. I sort of fear that this could, if not managed properly, increase the stress that you experience while studying rather than lessen it. But I still think it's a good idea, but it does require a lot of care and thinking about how we put students in the lead within our university. And the third game rule is that we think very consciously about what we used to call the professional skills, the professionele vaardigheden in Dutch, the professional skills in all of our subjects, particularly those that are going to be involving more than one faculty. So that's what's going to change in our curriculum, and it's going to change per September the 1st, 2023. That gives us a lot of responsibilities. That gives us that means that we have to sort of think well and think carefully, but also think quite quickly about what it is that we want to have changed in our curriculum. Of course, luckily, it's only first year that will start in the new mode on the 1st of September 2023. So we have a total of 3 years before all the bachelor curriculum is going to be finished and completely outlined and described and so forth and so forth. If there are any questions at this point, then I'd be happy to answer them. If not, let me at least go to the next slide, because this is your kingdom. This is the kingdom that I want you to rule over. It's our curriculum divided into units of 5 ECTS, because the university has decided, for the benefit of the flexibility of our curriculum, so that students can follow subjects with all faculties, and that the exchange of students among faculties is facilitated, that the rule of 5 ECTS per subject is a holy rule. We're not going to change that. Every subject needs to be at multiples of 5 ECTS or multiples of 5 ECTS. So we're allowed to do programs of 10 ECTS, such as the multi. We're allowed to do programs of 15, 20. We're even allowed to do programs of 30 ECTS in the bachelor. Although I must admit, I'd find it very difficult to imagine such a course that within the bachelor would be usefully given 30 ECTS. That would be very heavy indeed. So what we have here is our kingdom, and our kingdom is arranged in 3 ribbons. A bachelor college line, in which we can see that calculus will not go away. For those of you who like calculus, that'll be a good thing. For those of you who don't like calculus, you might have another opinion about that. In that first ribbon, which is really the bachelor college ribbon, youth ethics is placed in Q3. I think that's more or less settled that will be there. Q2 and Q4 of the first year will still be heavily involved with subjects like applied physics and data analytics, but exactly how they interact with the subjects from our faculty is yet to be decided. And what we're also trying to do is trying to make sure that the Department of Mathematics thinks more carefully about how calculus can be made more relevant to all our students. And that's a conversation that is going on. Then in years 2 and 3, so semesters 3, 4, 5, and 6, you will see a pink ribbon, and essentially that's the electives ribbon. That's where you can choose electives. And yeah, how we already have an idea about how we would like to see it. I'm not going to tell you that idea because I would like you to come up with your ideas about how you would like it. One thing that we cannot change is in Q4 of semester 4, second year, there's going to be a challenge-based learning project for clusters of faculties. So we will do a challenge-based learning project. Think of it as a multi, but then a multi with other faculties, data science, industrial design, mechanical engineering, you name it. And then that use advanced subject is in Q3 of the 6th semester. That leaves us an awful lot of space in which architecture and urban design, building physics, structural engineering and design, and urbanism and real estate need to find their place. At the moment, we are thinking of a subject line and a research and design project line, but even that, if you guys think differently, please let us know. So this is going to be your kingdom. You can scratch out, you can rub out, you can fill in, you can do whatever you like, but we would like ideas from you guys as to what this should look like by the end. One important aspect that we have to also talk about is how the faculty strategy relates to the bachelor curriculum. And one of the most important aspects of the faculty strategy is the emphasis on a number of urgent societal issues. We are dealing with some very urgent things that people at work within the built environment will need to take care about, will need to take care of. And we want this properly reflected in our curriculum. And I'll show you in a minute what those, sorry. What those societal themes are all about. And if we are to take those societal issues seriously, that means that following the university as a whole, we have noticed that there are students who want to dig deep into their discipline. They want to become good at their discipline. They want to become good structural engineers, good structural designers, good acousticians, good architects, good urban designers, you name it. But there is another group who says, yeah, sure, that's important. But I actually just want to be involved with the energy transition. I want to be involved with innovative building production. I want to be involved with circularity and sustainability. I want to be involved with inclusion and inclusivity. And actually, what I would really like to do is I would like to choose my curriculum. Remember, students in the lead. I want to be able to choose the elements of our curriculum in such a way that I can become really knowledgeable about the relationship of the built environment with the theme of sustainability. Right? Maybe that's what we want. So we have this dilemma. How do we deal with such a dilemma? How do we arrange our curriculum that we can service such students, of which we know there are many? So here are the disciplines, right? And you know that they famously are represented by the floor on which they're situated, right? And here are the flagship themes. Now, essentially, they all come down to two of them. They essentially come down to inclusion and sustainability. Because if you look at the energy transition, that is a sustainability issue. If you look at innovative building production, well, that is an issue for both inclusion and sustainability. And if you look at digitalization, well, that is a means we can no longer do without in order to achieve the objectives that we want to achieve. At the same time, digitalization is posing all sorts of problems that we also have to take account of. So there's a lot to be thinking about in designing our curriculum. And that brings me to the discussion we're going to have at this moment. Caitlin is going to be in the lead of that discussion. We're going to take each question, which is indeed quite an open question, but that is deliberately the case. We take an open question, which we can then refine in the discussion we have with each other so that we can better interpret it. The people at home can then vote or write something down or whatever they are going to be asked to do, and they can give us feedback on what we say. But the process is not going to be finished after today. So I invite all of you urgently to participate in the redesign of our curriculum. Only if we work at it together can we make sure that we get things right. Have I said everything, Caitlin? Probably said too much.
Yeah, I think I maybe should add for the students that I'm wondering, like, how can I then participate in this redesigning? How can I let my suggestions? Well, I'd like to inform you that as a Commissioner of Education this year, I am also at a seat at the Bachelor Revamp Group, which consists of multiple teachers and professors from all the units, and Jacob as well, where we discuss ways that we can redesign the built environment curriculum. So to say it clearly, for the students that are wondering how can I then get my opinion heard, then that is then to come to me, say I'm interested, I'd like to have a chat. You can email me, or you could just come by the GEOPS and talk. I'm also setting up a few surveys, one I'm going to send out at the end of this education table, which still has very open questions that you can then add more things that you wish you could have said at the moment now. And I'm also later going to send up some more surveys where you can also there show your opinion. So if you want to add anything, just come to me. That's the moral of it.
Now I'm told you can join this Mentimeter thing by using this code, right?
Yeah.
And people know that? Do they understand?
I guess they know now. So yes, the way we're going to do this again is we're going to with this presentation, we're going to put a few questions on the screen. So for the people at home, you can fill in the code, and then you can also add your responses into it. And while we discuss it here in this room, we'll see the results pop up on the screen, and we can react to that. And if any questions come up along the way, just ask in the chat. And I'll keep an eye on that so that we can also ask those. So I hope it's clear for everyone. Does anyone have a question of the people present? No, then yeah. So for the people at home, please just add your the code. If teachers also want to add join the Mentimeter, you can also as well. Maybe just add at the beginning of your answer, just teacher, so that we know that this is from the point of view of a teacher.
Yeah.
So
and, yeah, that would help. That would be great. Yeah. Okay. So shall I move on to the next slide then? Okay.
So first, one big discussion we're going to have now is when do we split the our curriculum into general knowledge that everyone should have, like every first year should finish their first year with, until the very specific ones of the disciplines. So when, how do you balance it with students that are still busy with their orientation and not sure what they want to do and still want to taste a bit of everything? with the people that have come to the university with, oh, are you ready from the beginning on to be a structural designer or an architect? So first a question to everyone present, and maybe also for the people in the chat, you can also just, or no, actually, sorry, in the Mentimeter, fill it in.
It's working.
Yeah, it is. So I'd like to ask for the for the people now sitting, for the students now sitting at the table, when did you decide which direction you want to do, and what made you decide this? What helped? So, and would like to start. Sanne?
And yeah, for me, it's now there are 4 people saying I changed track in the last period of my bachelor. There was just one when I looked for the last time, but yeah, for me it was my 3rd year doing the multi-project. I always said I want to become an architect, and then during the multi-project I was like, no, I'm not gonna do this the rest of my life. And I also discovered there that I'm interested in many more disciplines than only architecture. So then I decided to change. I did a half year extra, followed some extra courses from the other directions, structural design and also the urban systems part. And then I did my master now in urban systems real estate, but also construction management engineering, because I discovered during the multi-project that I'm not specifically interested in one discipline, but in more that the built environment has. So
Right.
for me, it was really at the end of my bachelor.
That's very interesting. That's very interesting. Would you have liked to have been able to choose earlier? Would you have wanted to know this earlier? Or were you actually quite happy that it came at that moment?
Yeah, I enjoyed my whole bachelor doing architecture, so I don't think that I felt like my study was stupid or something, that I didn't like it. But if I knew earlier, then I would have chosen different courses, and not only architecture courses, but also a bit more diverse.
Now,
yeah.
One of the reasons I'm asking is we're going to be concerned about how first year should be redesigned, right? And one of the issues, one of the big issues is, when do students split up in the various tracks? When would you like to have seen that point? But think about it now, and we'll come back to it in the discussion when that question is raised. Yeah. Okay.
Different answer. I thought I wanted to do structural design when I started. And then I got all the projects and I was like, okay, everything is kind of interesting. And I still like structural design the best. So I stayed with it and I'm happy with it. But I thought I knew what I wanted to do. Then I opened my mind, liked a bunch of things, and I still went with what I chose. So it's not really one of the options that's on there, because in the end, it seemed that I knew before I started, but it didn't feel that way. So it's good that I saw all the other differences, and that's why I'm very happy that I started studying here in Eindhoven and I didn't go to civil engineering in Delft, because that would have limited the education that I got.
I can also relate to it. I was doubting between civil engineering or the built environment in Eindhoven, because I wanted to do like a structural design when I came here first, and then I looked at civil engineering. I was like, no, it's too much onto one thing. So I will go to Eindhoven and I can see which direction I like most. And then later on, I'm going like this completely opposite side, because I'm now doing the construction management and engineering, because I also found out, especially like in the multi-project, but also before that I liked more like the beginning phase of a building project, about like thinking what needs to be there and what is suitable for the area, think about the people that live there, and that was what I enjoyed the most. And I also liked, for example, statics in the first year. It was like solving some puzzles or something, so I really liked that, but I never saw me doing that for my whole life. So that's, yeah, I changed in the first year, but I still liked like the direction I thought I was going into, but I didn't like the future, what kind of job you could do.
Yeah. Multi seems to be quite an important moment for many of you, right?
Yeah. I think also for the people that switch late, multi is like the project that you decide if it's your direction or not.
Okay.
Actually, my course has been a bit different from everybody else. I actually thought I wanted to become an architect when I first came here. But then after half a year or so, I actually started thinking about what the major challenges in the built environment were at that time. And I'm very happy that some of these were reflected in your presentation. But based on that, actually, I tried to imagine where I could have most influence, where I could really be of essence. And in doing so, in thinking about this, I actually chose for the building physics and services part, as I thought this was this would be in line with one of these challenges that the built environment is facing.
Well, interesting that you say that, because one of the issues we're camping with is the distribution of students, because many students come in thinking, oh, I'm going to become an architect, and then gradually change. But still, the distribution of students is worrying. We have a lot of emphasis on architecture, and very few go the building physics route, which is in fact such an urgent and important discipline to study with our current challenges. So it's an interesting thing that I hear you say that, and I would like, perhaps in a later moment, to exchange thoughts about you from how we could achieve such a redistribution of students. Maybe actually a question we should have had in the presentation. I forgot about that one. All right, that's great. Yeah.
Like the general story, as you can say, I came here and thought like, okay, I'm going to be an architect. And I held on to that thought really long. But I also was really good and I enjoyed doing some physics and math. So then I thought, okay, maybe do some structural design with it. And then when I did dimensioning of structures, I was like, maybe not. So, but only architecture wasn't the thing. I felt it was like too focused. So then I thought, well, let's go the other way. So do some urbanism courses with that. Yeah. So I did some extra courses and I really enjoyed that. And now in my master's, I also found out that my interest lies more in the in-between field between architecture and urbanism, and maybe a little bit more into urbanism and hardcore architecture. So yeah, but I don't feel like it's a bad thing to do because it took me a little bit more time to study. But in that time, I also found out what I really like. And I think that's also a process that you have to go through. Yeah. And that's not the same for everyone because some people already found what they really would like to do. And some people have to find their own way. But I think if you're okay with that, then it's also okay to have your own path in that and take a little bit longer to do it. So I don't think it should be a bad thing.
One of the issues we're going to be thinking about in the coming months is how do we, in the first year, we're going to be introducing obviously what this faculty is about. And we're going to cover a lot of common ground within our 4 disciplines and within the themes that we've outlined. One of the difficult issues is how the tracks should behave with regard to each other after that first year. Should they become completely separate? What points should they join? Perhaps who should join with whom in forming coalitions at certain moments in the curriculum? Or is it perhaps a good idea that the elective is reserved for people who might want to sort of become a pie-shaped engineer rather than a T-shaped engineer? You know what I mean? That they use the elective ribbon to acquire extra experience in another field or according to some theme or something. So I'd like to have you guys think about that aspect of things as well. How would you? And maybe send me a drawing of it if that's what would illustrate the thing. I'd be very happy with such drawings. Yeah. Okay. Caitlin, is there anything in the chat?
Yes, just for the people at home, I was just about to type for. If you'd like to add your stories of when you made your decisions, please do, because it's also useful to us. Yeah. Now I actually like to also hear from some people that haven't done multi yet and that are still in the bachelor. So maybe we can start with Leonie and then after go to Reed and Kalina.
Yeah, so yeah, I have not done my multi yet. For me, I started the same, I think, as Gijs, thinking I wanted to become an architect. I also remember the question that you, Jacob, asked in Architecture in the City of like, who wants to become an architect? And nearly all the hands go up. And then you say, okay, that's not the reality in a couple of years. Yeah. So that surprised me, but I fully understand right now.
Actually, for me, what was the turning point was when I first visited a company, and then I saw, oh, this is very cool. So I visited a building physics company during the BOW excursions in my first year. So that is really when I switched from architecture to more the B side. But still to this day, I'm kind of in between BPS and SD. And that's really an aspect that I really like about our bachelor, that you do have the freedom. And I feel like even to the point that you're going to graduate, you do not really have to make a hard decision on what you're really going to do afterwards. You can just orientate you in all the directions that you want to and focus on what you really like and love. Because for me, I see myself working in the BPS field, but I really like the SD courses. Yeah. So I really don't know yet what to do.
In a certain sense, our faculty already allows you to be in the lead of your own, of the peculiar shape that you yourself want to become, right?
Yeah, and I want to add that I feel like first years already feel a lot of pressure the first time they hear, I need to choose. I heard it a lot as a mentee, because I'm doing second year as a mentor. And I hear them a lot stressing out about, okay, when do I need to make the decision? And I always tell them, you never really have to make a hard decision. You just get a point in which you can decide electives, and then you can orientate you a little bit more into a direction that you want to. So I feel like maybe putting the stress on the first years of making a decision is maybe not going to work for everyone.
No. Okay. But that's an interesting one that you say, well, because it's true, right? Our bachelor degree formally gives us right of entry to the master ABP, which gives us right for an architect to do a master in structural engineering formally. I mean, I don't think we recommend it, and we would need to sort of say from yes, but be careful, the calculations you do will matter. People will die if you get them wrong. So you've got to be very careful about that. But I like that attitude, because from the staff end of things, I have always considered that third quartile choice as quite a hard choice. But you're saying, it's not quite as hard as you think it is.
No, because to be honest, I'm now in my third year. I'm going to do a fourth year because of the board year I'm doing. But I'm still not have made a hard decision. And I also heard from a lot of companies that they end with a master in architects and that they go to calculation into a company. So I kind of feel like the working field is so open. Of course, you need a certain bag of knowledge. As you said, you do need to know how to calculate certain things if you want people not to die. But I do feel like putting a lot of pressure on, you really need to make a decision. For my opinion, that's not really the right thing to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's very helpful, all of you. Yeah.
Budding quickly, I think they cancelled the BOW excursions this year. Is that correct? Did they still happen?
They happened online.
Okay. Because the projects were a bit longer than previous years. So the 2 weeks in which the excursions usually happened, they weren't there anymore.
No, they happened online.
They were online. Yeah. It was quite difficult. They happened online. Yeah.
Yes.
But I think those were very important as well. Yeah.
I completely agree. Yeah.
That's good stuff. All right.
Yeah. And what about from Viet, who's now in his second year, I believe. Since the beginning, you may have known what you wanted to do, but so how did it work?
I think I'm a bit of a different story than rest of the people. I already studied for a year in Prague, and I studied architecture there. And I come from a background of more of an artist, and I was always painting. So architecture came as more of an from a different side, not from the technical side. But I did want to explore those structural sides and really understand them and of architecture. So that's why I came to Eindhoven. What I think, it's a very tricky question now that I'm thinking of it. I can't really have an answer. What I think is that in most of the countries, you decide for architecture and then you do that. But I think the school is quite well reflecting the reality of the trade. I think it's no longer that you are a simple architect, and there's more and more specialization happening in the world, and in the future it's going to be more and more specialized probably. so I guess in that way it makes sense, and I would maybe even say to have a bit more freedom in choosing the electives in the bachelor, because I feel a lot of people, even when I talk with graduation architects, they do something totally different in the end. They might choose to be urban planners or structural engineers and so on. So I think it's going in a good track, the bachelors.
Yeah.
This way.
Thank you, Veet. And by the way, Veet, you are an example to me, because you did exactly what I would so enjoy it if more students do, and that is write me a letter with what they want in the curriculum. And thank you for that letter. And your ideas have been heard, not just by me, but by quite a few people by now. And we are going to take them very seriously. So again, students, it helps to write letters to us. Thank you.
Yeah. So, and I still haven't really made a decision. I think I'm now interested a lot in real estate. So going to college.
Are you serious? Goodness me. I love it.
So I think we hear a lot of sounds of people not really being quite sure after the first year, and it's also what I see now in the chats. A lot of people are saying that a Bauhaus studio is a very good start. You do taste a little bit of everything, but it's not enough to give you the reassurance or the assurance that this is what you want to do or what you don't want to do. But maybe we can hear this best from Kalina, a first-year student who I invited. How are your experiences with orientation?
So hello. First, I want to say that I haven't had yet the presentation for the company in the A direction, but I think this is this Friday, so I can't really base anything on that. However, I can base on the Bauhaus studio that we have, and I think yesterday I finished with the last project, and the project, all the projects really gave a bit of information about everything, but not really. So even after the studio, I'm not really sure if I'm going to choose the right direction that I like, or I'm not even sure what the directions all consist of yet. And I think that for the quartile 4, then we have a second Bauhaus studio. I think there I would maybe understand better if the decision I take is correct or not. But as I heard, many people have changed, so I'm not that stressed about that.
Good. No, you shouldn't ever be stressed, and there is always help. So if you do start feeling stressed, you must always get in touch with the academic advisors who are always there to help you, or some teacher that you think I think that is the person who I want to sort of bother or tell my problem to, and get that person's advice.
I think Robin would like to react.
I'd like to add something. There's also, you have a student mentor in the first year, and I think that's a very important person who has some knowledge of the courses and also knows some people who've chosen certain directions, so they can get you in touch with people who know about the directions that you can choose. I think that's very helpful as well.
Those mentors, because like half of the people didn't know who their mentor was.
Okay.
Yep.
And so there got loose.
Well, that is something particularly with regard to the personal and professional development line that we have to sort of take very seriously, that we organize that mentorship in a better way. Yeah,
because it was like in my third Bauhaus studio project, I got told that the teacher of the first Bauhaus studio would have been my mentor, but she was long gone. So I was like, okay, I'm on my own here. But
the student mentors.
Yeah, no, it became clear really late to a lot of students in my year. So I don't know what went wrong there. But
well, in the redesign, we're going to have to take that seriously.
Yeah.
Shall we go to the?
I'd also still like to see, because it seems that Bauhaus studio has come quite a lot of times into the discussion now, and I was wondering quickly if maybe Wouter Hilhorst has a question to ask the students in regards on Bauhaus studio and how to take it on, and maybe for the new form. Should it be more about the visibility of the tracks, or should we more focus on going in depth into the directions? I can just imagine that for you, it can be a few questions that pop up in your head.
Thanks, Caitlin. No, I'm let's see, all the things you bring up help me understand how you experience Bouwstudio 1, which is very valuable. One thing I actually did not realize that the difference with Delft indeed is that in Eindhoven you all are exposed to all these different directions. So you're much more aware of the possible choices you can make. I think much more aware than when you would be in a one-track faculty. And actually, I never realized this, but for me, it's a valuable thing to learn today. And I'm going to think about this. Bouwstudio 1, of course, has two purposes. It has the purpose of giving enough information about the different directions, but the other purpose is also to give you first knowledge and skills. So that I also have to take into account the other purpose of just being educational. But I'm taking with me all the things you did today. So.
Okay, sorry if I put you a bit on the spot, Wouter. But yes, maybe we can move on to the next point. Is anyone still here that'd like to add something, or is something?
What Wouter said, that we as a faculty offer all the directions in the build environment. And that was also for me one of the reasons that I went to Eindhoven and not to Delft, because I think that also when I first started here saying that I wanted to become an architect, that it was really useful to have knowledge of all the directions to become a good architect. So that was for me the reason to go to Eindhoven and not to Delft. So I think that it is something valuable that we have as a faculty.
A unique selling point.
Yeah,
and you see it when we're doing multi. For instance, like I did as an architect, but I also knew something about the urbanism. I knew something about construction, knew something about BPS. So you could like talk on a level somewhere. You know, and also like the structural designers knew what the architects had to struggle with, so you can have kind of a mutual respect in the project. And I think that really shows in multi that you have this kind of.
We're going to get
knowledge.
to these issues later. So this is a
great,
good point.
Great
but
predictions.
Yeah.
And nice that it also comes up naturally with your discussion.
Absolutely. That's the big advantage of open questions.
Yes.
Thank you.
Shall we go to the next one?
Yes.
All right.
My guest.
Well, the next question is, knowing what you know about the bachelor program, what do you like about it? What do you like about it? You will get your chance to say what you don't like about it. This again is an open question. You are invited to write things in little texts, and if it works well, these columns of text will start appearing as you write. So do feel free to write about them.
Yeah. So for the people at home, you can, in this case, you don't need to use the chat, but just use Mentimeter, and then we can see it on big on the screen.
Exactly. And one of the things is, you see, what we as staff realize too little is that the only people who really know our curriculum are the students. I don't know the curriculum all that well at all. I just know my bit in it, and I know what I need to know to be the program director. But you guys know the curriculum inside out, so that's why we're particularly interested in you guys answering the next two questions.
Oh, who'd like to start?
I can start. I think if I can divide it up basically into 3 points. The first is more about the bachelor in general, and that includes the freedom of choice that we have. So I think someone already mentioned that we have multiple tracks here, and the ability to switch between the tracks and to pick some electives in different directions to get a feel for each of them and to be able to already specialize a little bit in the direction you're interested in the bachelor is one of the main selling points, basically, of the bachelor program. And then how that translates into courses, I think is best reflected in the multi-project, which is where all the tracks come together. And that's also kind of the first time actually in the bachelor that you get an idea of, okay, so this is how real projects are designed and developed and engineered. And this is how these disciplines interact with each other. And that's a bit of an eye-opener, really, but also really enjoyable. And the second part I'd like to stress is the electives part. In the major courses, I feel that there's always this pressure that it should be common ground, it should be broad, and it has to be in order to give everybody a fighting chance in the course. But in the electives, you often get a lot more depth. And also you get a much better feel of what the discipline is actually struggling with in terms of the challenges that it is facing and in terms of the amount of knowledge that is actually in that specific discipline.
Okay, so you actually feel that the electives, when they are sort of specialization electives, give you greater depth in the curriculum. That's interesting. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, people are filling the things up, aren't they?
I think you might have to scroll down a little bit.
Such fun to see this happening. Yeah.
All right.
Dennis.
Yeah. Overall, I think I completely agree with the points Gijs just mentioned. I think the way that everyone can really find their own study path throughout their studies is really interesting, and you can really tailor that bachelor to you as an individual. I think that's one of the main selling points of our bachelor. And kind of strangely, since we're discussing the change of our bachelor, the way we structure our bachelor, I think I really like the main elements of the bachelor the way it was. So the fact that we have our first year, which is somewhat rigid, and I mean you get points of view from every single discipline.
Yeah.
I think that's really valuable, and you have to do them to be able to understand one another later in their studies. And then also the general setup of the projects in the second year is really nice. I personally did 2 architecture projects and 2 usury projects, and the way that you can switch between them and the way that they're set up, you dive into a broader topic and start working with that. It's really interesting. Okay. And that all forms and comes together in multi, where you do it with the 6 of you, which is a massive challenge but a great experience overall. I think if you ask every student that's currently working on multi, they're getting headaches of it, but on hindsight, I think
stress all round.
Yeah, indeed. And in hindsight, everyone looks back at it and it's like, wow, we did an amazing thing. It was really cool to interact with one another like this. And well, obviously, the BAP is just basically a project that you did in the second year, only a bit more elaborate. So yeah, I really like that structure.
Okay. So if so the project structure, as you say, you would keep that ribbon as a research and design ribbon. As it were.
I think that's really interesting. Yes.
Okay.
The only thing I could add to that is that I had to find out myself that you can actually combine the different project tracks.
Yeah.
Because I went to study advisor, said like, okay, hey, I'm only in architecture, but I'm like, what are the options? And then I found out too late actually to do something about that. But I think if you can make that clear, then it gives a lot of value to this project as well, because then the students also feel that they can not only do courses in the different fields that they can choose in their electives, but they can also choose a little bit in those projects. Because I find sometimes the bachelor, especially first year, but if that's rigid, that's good, because I think you're going to a new university. That's already like a kind of scary thing to do. Yeah. So then it's good to keep them a little bit on the ground. And I think in the second year, you can give them already a little bit more freedom also in those projects. And And the other thing that I really liked about these packages, the Korean packages that we have right now, is that sometimes you also have to do courses which are in this package that you wouldn't really choose in the first place. But then after you do them, because you have to do them, you actually learn a lot of valuable things that you wouldn't have learned if you wouldn't have done the course, because you wouldn't have chosen it in the first place.
So in other words, you don't think that students in the lead is a good idea?
Well, I think to some degree, but I also think that all people are kind of naive to know what they really like. And I think if you're going to be exposed to some new things that you wouldn't actually choose yourself, you can actually explore and find out really nice things, and also find out new ways of how you would look at, for instance, architecture, urbanism. Because I can be open about, like in the first place, the course of Renato, which are a little bit more in the air somewhere. Yeah. I was like, okay, what I'm going to do with this, but in the end, I actually realized that I learned a lot from them. To look differently at approaches, how to take approach, and how to do design, and how to rethink the thinking process that I had in the first place. So I think if I would have had the freedom to choose them, I don't know if I would have chosen them in the first place, but I think I learned a lot from them actually. So I think that's really valuable.
So what would be the lesson that we as redesigners take from this? It means that we actually sort of should make some courses mandatory, even though.
I think the thing is that you, or like we now know what the right track is, or what the right thing is to do, what you can learn from some things. And I think the students in that moment don't realize what the value of some courses are, or what they need in that moment for their own development.
Okay. That's a nice point.
I think you learn what direction you want to go in, or it's validation by doing that direction and the others. Even though sometimes I didn't like a course from other direction, that also gives me the validation that I was in the direct, that I did the direct direction, the correct direction. So, so yeah, that validation is also really important, because I think if you don't have that validation, you will always be like, but what if I did choose something else? So I really like that. And another point that is not mentioned yet is that I really like from our bachelor, but maybe that's also more a university-wide thing, is that we also can keep it quite low scale. So you have like these projects with only 4 people in a tutor session, so that it feels really personal. And also the study advisors, when I went there because I didn't know what to choose, you really had this personal approach, which really helps and also makes you feel welcome. At least I felt really welcome at
so the small scale.
Yeah, the small scale is really something that I value a lot at
the problem is that the small scale costs so much.
Yeah, that's
but we're gonna just have to pay the price. I think,
but also, for example, at Bouwstudio, when you just come here, you have those student assistants that are really approachable, and you also like see them not only at Bouwstudio, but also, for example, in the canteen or somewhere else in the faculty, and you just have like a small talk to them, and that also feels like quite welcome. You can ask them questions. They have a lot more experience, and having those students also helping you, like when you first come here, that's really important, I think.
Okay, cool. We'll keep that.
I see that we have quite a few responses on Mentimeter. If you maybe scroll down, then we can also see a few of those.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, there's quite a long text, so they're.
Well, how do I scroll down there?
I don't know. Maybe some of your colleagues has experience with Mentimeter, but.
Here we are.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, wow, there's lots of stuff.
Okay. And
yeah.
And while we leave this on the screen for everyone to read a bit, Leonie, do you have something you'd like to say?
I think a lot is already said. I think I had a lot in my mind. I was like, oh yeah, you say it now. I just want to add, I completely agree with the fact of doing courses that you maybe have not intended that you would like. For example, all the A courses were horrible for me, but I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're going to be able to say that in a minute.
Yeah. But,
or say it again.
Yeah, but I did learn a lot from them, and I did also learn that was not my direction. And I am happy that I understand how architects think, and I am happy that if I ever am at maybe a BPS firm or an SD firm, that if I work together with an architect, I know how to deal with it and how they come up with that ideas, and have respect for their thinking processes. So I think that's a very strong thing from our faculty.
Well, if
And I think-
that is all you learn, you have learned a lot.
Yeah.
No, but that's serious because, you know,
Yeah.
we make a mess of our built environment precisely because we sort of, you know, work past each other
Yeah.
and don't take proper account of each
Yeah,
other.
I think
So
it
it's
is very,
important.
very important. And I think also I agree with Stephen on that as a first year, you're not going to think about that. You're not going to say, okay, I'm going to do a course that I do not like to learn that. That's not going to happen. So there needs to
No.
be a mandatory aspect to that to be able to learn that. And I also think another a whole different topic, but it's never really mentioned a lot, but Bow Studio 2, I think is a very strong course because it's really, I said to my group last year, my mentor group, and I'm also saying that this year, it's really a course that you can use in different ways. You can check if it's your direction, or you could check if it's not your direction. So yeah,
Yeah, it is.
yeah, and it's a really strong course. And I think the setup of Bow Studio, and then not very later on, you have Bow Studio 2, I think it's a very strong division in the first year. So I
Okay,
think
well, we're doing this curriculum redesign on the basis of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So
yeah,
maybe
no,
this ain't
that's
broke.
not broke, in my opinion. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyone else something to add?
One thing, if I can say, with a comparison of different universities that I've seen and in different countries, I think what I absolutely love, and it's not really about the curriculum, but maybe in combination with the Dutch culture, is the absolute professionalism of the tutors and of the university and of the school. I think it's unbelievable. In many schools, you would see that they're trying to maybe kick you out of the university if you don't pass certain courses, and it's maybe a different and more rough environment and not really personal. But here I see that the student is really dignified and respected, and there's always a helping hand. You can always have a student advisor or a psychologist or someone to help you out. And I think that's such an important part of the bachelor's. And I really like the point about the small scale, and I kind of understand that the small scale combined with the money ratio is that you're trying to combine it with by the student tutors, right? Because I guess it's a cheaper value, and you have a smaller scale because you have a lot of these student tutors, and I think it works quite well. And I would even say that the scale can be even smaller, that there can be even a more personal relationship with the older students and with the tutors. So I think that's really important in the learning process of many students to have a very personal relationship with some tutor or someone that teaches you something as an inspiration in your studies. But that's not that much about the curriculum, really.
No. Well, nevertheless, nice to hear. Goodness me.
Maybe last but not least, Galina, what are your experiences so far in your first year?
Well, for the last thing that was said, I actually really like having older students around that I can ask, and I can really ask them questions, and also my mentor. And so far, I really like the program, and again, I'm just looking forward to seeing more of each part. So in the end, I have something, and I study something that I really like. But I do want to highlight that I'm a person that doesn't really like to choose between things. And right now, this program is giving me an opportunity to explore everything and not focus on one specific thing, which I really, really enjoy.
Okay. Well, it's good hearing you guys saying all this. As I would like to echo what Wouter says, a lot of it is good to hear, and some of it also surprising to hear. So that's very, very nice to have that confirmed. Okay.
Yeah. Maybe just scroll a little bit up to see that we didn't miss any comments. At least it's in a live stream, the recording, and then we can always read it back later.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone that's filling it in.
Yeah, thank you. We're going to keep these. So
Yeah.
what you have written on here, it does not get lost. It's going to be kept and processed, and also what you guys are saying is going to be kept and processed.
Okay. Great.
Shall I go to the next question? Okay. Now, this really is a euphemism to ask you, what don't you like? All right. So, all right. I'm now going to put on my helmet. Yeah, go for it, Britt. Go for it.
Yeah, I'm now speaking from like my personal experience and the direction that I'm currently in, but I think it also applies to some other directions. Is that how certain directions are like the basic courses of certain directions are filled in. For example, for the usury courses, I went in that direction in my bachelor, and now I'm doing CME. So, but when I'm looking back at those courses, they weren't my favorite courses, but I still went to that direction mainly based on the projects and on the electives you chose. But I like and I also think that's for BPS the case. Those basic courses didn't give me like a good overview of what the direction was, what would be. For example, if I look at for usury, just giving a suggestion, what I would have liked to see, and what I also would have liked to see the other students for other directions that they could do is, for example, we have a course called, what is it, like financial, or urban projects and finance, that was the name. And it's you see like this case about like a building plot, and you have to calculate what it's all going to cost. And that's, I think, something that for other students can also be very interesting to see how those calculations work. But now for example, the 2 usury courses, they kind of feel like the same, and it don't feel like I learned something different at the second course. And that was the same for me at the BPS courses. I didn't have the feeling that I learned something new at the second course. So I would like to, start up, but maybe someone else has an opinion about that.
Yeah, I agree. No, I totally agree. I have a bit more of a perspective than on the BPS courses. Yeah, I talked about it with some teachers already, and they told me that there are so many topics in the BPS courses. There's materials, which there has been a little bit more focus on the materials than the past, is someone told me. And then you have all the aspects of like acoustics, thermal comfort. So it's like, I think under the line, you have around 10 topics, and then you need to fit that in 8 weeks. And then that 2 times. So first you get the basics, and then you get the basics again with a little extra. But you do not really learn a lot. And I've also had a lot of friends from mine in the A direction who asked me like, okay, what course do I need to follow to understand a little bit of BPS or a little bit SD, because I need to have some structural knowledge about where I can place this or do that. And then I said, yeah, like basically all the courses, including the projects, because there's not really one course that will teach you very good the basics. It's just a very big collection of a lot of topics, never really in depth, but repeated a couple times. That's my view on the BPS courses that are mandatory. And I also agree on the U courses. It's it's a little bit extra on the second course, but it's not that much. Yeah.
Okay, so
a theme that just goes through the whole curriculum. Sometimes something is explained in one course of the U direction, and then they repeat it in the B direction as well, or in the SD.
Yeah.
And it's just, there's no cohesion, it seems, between the different courses.
Thank you so much for saying that. As I said, you know, we don't have an overview of our curriculum. And we once had an education day where we asked tutors to present their subjects, and they did very enthusiastically, and there were all 3 beautiful subjects. And yet one thing we learned was how much overlap there is in each of those courses. So we're going to have to deal with that. Sorry, I interrupted you, Dennis.
No problem. I think that nicely touches on the thing I would have loved to see change, and that is the interdisciplinarity of our different directions on topics where we all deal with. So you mentioned earlier the main societal topics. Every direction within our department has a specific point of view on how to tackle this problem, how to act in this problem. And it's very interesting, I think, to see how those directions interact with one another when discussing such a topic. For example, I don't think anywhere in our curriculum currently do the U direction and the or more the real estate direction come together with BPS. And although that combination doesn't seem in a very clear perspective in the first place, I think it's really interesting to tackle those societal challenges.
Yeah. But wonderfully enough, I mean, in the multi, it's always BPS and real estate that really sort of set the agenda, because the BPS people want energy neutrality or climate neutrality within so many years, and the real estate people want to make enough money to make a decent profit. And those two things are constantly in conflict. So you would think that there would be somebody who'd said, hey, we got to get these BPSs talking to the real estate people and see how that works, right? Yeah. Good point, Dennis. Thank you. Yes.
I think this also applies to building physics, actually in a lot of different ways, because now we take out 2 mandatory courses to teach everybody the very basics of how to calculate the thermal resistance of a wall. While actually this is of course not the real challenge for the building sector anymore. We've known how to calculate those kind of things for well over 100 years now.
Yeah.
What is really a challenge is how to find an innovative material that would insulate a wall without polluting the environment, and that's also cost effective. But that's a really specific question. And this also applies to other tracks within building physics, of course. For example, the combination with urbanism, where we have the urban heat island effect, which is not touched upon in a general course, but rather in a specialization elective. But this way, the urbanists also don't really get to know the issue of this. Mm-hmm. So the real challenges of each discipline don't really come forward in the basic courses, while I think that actually that should be the case. Because that way people can understand the interactions between them and still have a good basis, because calculating the thermal transmittance of a wall is honestly not that challenging.
Right. Yeah. There's lots of stuff happening on the Mentimeter, by the way. It's scrolling around, right? Yeah, but even so, there's quite a lot of interesting stuff.
But I agree, like what you like we were thinking about, how can you give people direction in their bachelor, like in what they like and what they don't like. I think like those problems where more disciplines come together, then they can form an opinion. Okay, where do I stand in the solution of this? Is it more on the BPS side of this problem? Is it more in the urban design part of the problem? And then you can kind of have a decision in what you would like to do. Another thing that popped into my mind was in the masters, you can choose your projects, and like there are like 7 of them in architecture or 8. That's a lot, and I don't know if it's going to be executed that well in a bachelor. I don't know if that's possible, but sometimes I also was in the project of A, and then I was like, this is like I talked about, maybe sometimes it's good to do some stuff that you in the start don't really like, but of some things you really know that you don't like them. And yes, that was a project in A that I had to do because I didn't have a choice in doing another project because that was set. And maybe that would also encourage people more to do their best in those projects and also really do what they like.
Yeah. Should the electives have a few project?
I think if speaking from architecture, if you would have, for instance, a choice between 2 projects already, then you could give a little direction into what kind of project you would like to do, or what you would like to specialize in, because it's really different from a more urban architecture project, or you're doing really a project of a tea house where you have to detail everything. If they're like really different, and some people are really motivated about the mid scale, and some people are really motivated about small scale, and some people really don't like the other scale. So, and that's something that you already know, and that doesn't have to do anything about loving doing architecture or not, but it's like what kind of architecture you would like to do. And the last thing that I found a little bit tricky in my bachelor's is that the connection with the practicals, like with the practice, of architecture itself is a little bit lost, like so with companies and something like that, because also the project I felt where I was like, oh, it's this kind of dream project and it's not like really realistic, or it's like that kind of sense. Whereas if I would get a case from a company, for instance, although they wouldn't do anything with it because like I'm a first year, second year student, so what do I have to tell them? But it would give a little bit more context and also a little bit more value or credibility to the kind of project that we are dealing with in the bachelor, because then it feels more realistic. So you are also going to think differently about it, I think.
Yeah, well, there are some developments underfoot that might help that. So keep that one in write it down, because I think that'll be very useful. Yeah.
Well, I think the latter part of that is actually tackled pretty well by the USRE unit in terms of connecting companies and practice to their courses by doing guest lectures or getting people from those companies to actually give a course and explain how it works. I think that's a really nice, it gives a really interesting perspective on education.
And there is now a university budget to get such people into the curriculum.
Amazing.
Does Vitor Kalinos like to add something?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have a lot of points, and I try to structure them. And
You were just being so
paper
nice.
where
So now we're going to get the other side, are we?
writing things. So I'm more critical on this, and so there's many points, and I'll try to make them in sort of way. First thing, a lot of people are talking about the freedom of choosing courses. I think, in a way, the freedom is quite artificial. Because you always have to plan with the time slots, you always have to plan with the Korean packages, and if you don't pass a certain course in your first year, you have to repeat it in your second year, or maybe later, and then it's packing all those courses with time slots and everything. Then in the end, you don't really have that much choice, and you kind of have to fill at least one Korean package, at least that's what student advisor told me, in order to be plausible to pass. And so in the end, it's not that free as I see it, or as some people say. I would be a bit critical to that, and I think the university has to decide. And I think now it's somewhere in the middle on the wave. It has to decide if it's going to be either very, very free for the people to decide, and it's going to get more time slots and maybe more of a freedom, and the course can be repeating, or if it's going to be more strict, and if it's going to be more structured for the student, and the courses are going to have a bigger, higher quality maybe. Maybe it's something in between that the university has to decide. Maybe what I am facing up the most, and what I'm maybe most critical about, and as I was saying, the great things about the Dutch culture, which is the professionalism and the structure and everything, maybe what I'm missing is that when you make these 4 projects in your A direction or B direction, that they're so short and they're almost seen like chores. You make this project and then you submit it, and then it's kind of done, and you maybe get like a 5-minute critique, or maybe 5 minutes of questioning. What my biggest proposal is, what I'm missing the most is architectural critiques or structural critiques, and they're often these events where students propose their final projects, and they're very harshly criticized, and they go through it and they dissect the project, and it's a huge motivation throughout your studies. It's a huge motivation for you to make the project as well as you can. And it also creates this huge amount of life in the critiques when people are questioning and talking, and I believe they could be big. I believe even in day projects, people could print them out. We could make a hall or something, and I think there could be even professors invited from different universities. I think there could be professors from Delft or from Aachen, or from the Academy of Arts, and they could come in and look at the projects that students in Eindhoven are making, and they could be critiqued and dissected. And that's a huge, at least it was for me, a huge learning curve, because you learn what are the other points of views of the other teachers and students, and I think even in that way, you kind of get interested in different courses and different fields. You might see, and it can even be with building technology projects, or I think a great project is architecture and technology, led by Jan Schevers. I think these projects could be put up in the hall, and professionals can come in and you see what you did, what you don't like about it, and it's just such an important, valuable thing in many architectural universities, and it's missing here.
Thank you. That was heard. That was also part of the package you gave me in writing.
It was one of the things.
Yes, it was one of the things, and a very important thing it was too. Thank you. Yep. Yes, please.
Because I totally agree with almost all of them, but what you're saying, for example, that the sense of freedom is from your experience limited. From my own experience, I didn't find it limited at all, because in the end I did no coherent package. I did like 2 courses of 3, so there was no one was complete. But just talking to the study advisors, then when you know, that's maybe more of a part of like communication, when you know where to go, you quite have a lot of freedom, but not everyone knows that. So that's the downside of that. But since I had that contact and I had that information, I could easily choose what I wanted.
Yeah, that is true. We tend not to publicize the fact that you don't have to do a coherent package, and that's partly to do with university policy. But indeed, you don't have to do a coherent package. You can pick and choose as you go. Absolutely. Mind you, then you would never have done your wonderful subject. So maybe we should keep that policy of not publicizing things.
Yeah. About the coherent packages, there's something I'd like to see changed. For the SED direction, there's 5 courses in 2 coherent packages, and you have to choose at least 6 selectives. So you can't even, if you want to specialize purely on SED, there's not enough courses for you. You have to choose something else from a different package, and that's okay for most people, but I would have liked something else in the SAD direction.
Okay. What do you feel is missing there then?
Timber in the bachelor.
Okay, yes, I've heard that before.
Timber in general.
Timber in general, right? We hear it loud and clear.
And also, I have some more points about the SED direction. So currently there's 4 B projects in the second year. And they are, first one is construction technology and building technology. Then the second one is building physics, I think. Then there's structural design and engineering, and then there's a research. But what they say at the beginning of the year, I wanted to choose some projects from other directions as well. But they said at the beginning of the year, no, you cannot do it. All the projects are linked together. You have to follow all of them or none of them, which was very harsh and then limited me in my choices. And I get that you want to focus on one thing and get people specialized and not have them, oh, I didn't know that because I did another project. But still, it would be very interesting to be able to choose different things, and also to let students know that they can do that. So that links as well to the courses and the coherent packages over there. And I thought, while we were discussing things, maybe the main courses in the bachelor or in the first year can be made around the main themes that you want to do as the faculty. So if you are talking about digitalization or something else, just invite different teachers from different directions, and that way students can see, oh, in this part, this challenge, I want to take maybe a course on that, on the structural design.
The themes are coming back.
Yeah.
We're going to have those themes coming back. Yeah.
And then something that is not really related to the bachelor program, but still in general, I think there should be more tutoring from older students towards the younger students on what courses they can take, what they are all about. Because in the first year you have a mentor who is a teacher, and I have never seen, or I've had one meeting with that person, but they are still a teacher from one direction. They haven't really been in contact with the other directions, or they know what they're about.
This is really a point to Cheops as well, isn't it? Really.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Was something organized where you could talk to older year students with their coherent package choices? And I had the idea that a lot of students liked it because they had a lot of questions, I found out. and yeah, it helped them a lot. So I think also that student-student contact is something that can be.
But the use of student assistants would then also be helpful, right? So Geops could do something here. Students' assistants could do something
when
here.
I was a student mentor
Student
myself,
mentors. Yeah.
I asked a bunch of my friends from the multi-project, said to my group, hey guys, can you please come here? We'll get some lunch for you. Please answer some questions from our first years. And then the first years really liked that as well.
Okay.
They could ask their questions to the person who were doing a certain direction for 2.5 years already.
Mm-hmm.
I do, however, really think that's dependent on how you approach your studies and in what phase you are. Because for me personally, student assistant or student advisor in the second or third year wasn't that useful, wouldn't have been that useful.
The option, for there being the option, that would for some people help.
Yeah, I think that is where the study association, and not only GEOPS, but also the master associations really can kick in, especially concerning the selection of the master, of course, but also the specialization within the bachelor.
I think Steven,
both of them.
Yeah, I forgot one thing to mention. As I'm now talking to some companies, like getting to work, actually, the software skills is something that isn't really accentuated in the studies, especially because if I would have known that, for instance, Revit is such a big deal in the architecture business, I maybe would have specialized into that more during my studies. Because I actually don't like the program. I mean, shoot the messenger, but I don't like it. But if they're using it, then I have to adapt to that. So I don't think like you should get some like program courses. I know they were in the past, because you can learn a lot from YouTube and stuff like that. But there also needs to be the room and the time to actually do that, because I felt like in my bachelor's, I didn't have the time to actually sit down and get to know the pros of Adobe and all the stuff like that. And also maybe as a university know what the business side of architecture and urbanism or structural design uses, and actually implement those in the projects, because we used Archicad. But at that moment, we already knew that the whole branch of architecture would go to Revit. And for instance, for structural design, they're also doing a lot with programming, like with Python and stuff like that. So I think it's really valuable if that comes back in the bachelor already.
That's I think the last comment from Gijs, because I think we'll have to move on to the next
we have to
too.
move on.
One other thing that I would like to stress is that the overlap with other departments within our university is not really there. Well, it is very obvious in practice. And in the past, of course, we had engineering design, disaster, of course. We had use learning lines, which I won't waste any words on. But really the overlap between the built environment and other departments is obviously very vague. However, between different disciplines, it becomes much clearer. For example, for building physics, I can think of the mechanical engineering departments in terms of renewable energy technologies. And obviously for USRE, I think there's a big overlap with the industrial engineering.
Data science as well.
Like data science. And all these kind of things that sort of overlap, but are never really talked about.
But this is something for the challenge-based learning aspect of what we do.
I suppose so.
That'll be the big opportunity there. So
it's also something that's now being proposed and also discussed and how it precisely will do. And then the idea now is like not, for example, engineering design. One reason it didn't work very well is that a lot of studies were just dumped together. And then it's like, okay, you are architects, you draw, and then you don't have anything else to bring as a built environment student. But now we're looking at splitting up the studies which actually have a lot to do with each other. So for example, a lot of things with the industrial design, or maybe the technical students with the mechanical engineering, those things. So that's also a conversation that's going on. I'd like to invite you if you want to.
I think industrial design, but also psychology and technology are really relevant, because they already do a lot of courses from our discipline. But it's not like really common for people from our department to do something about psychology and technology, whereas we actually are designing for people and they react upon the things that we design.
Absolutely,
so
I think since it's also a discussion on the university level, I think I'd also like to set up another conversation, at least surveys or something, some way to see how do you see this envision this collaboration between universities. So then we can now work back into what we think of the built environment, and then after we can later work into what we want to do.
No, but this is an important point. We're
Exactly.
going to take that along.
For sure.
Absolutely. Shall I go
So
to the
take
next
time for
question
it.
then?
Yes.
Yep. Okay. Well, this is a simple one. Rather, it's deceptively simple. These are our flagship themes. And we would quite like to rank you to rank them. And the reason we want you to rank them is so that we can obviously prioritize them in the redesign, whereby we can say from, well, some things need to happen. This is great. I love this. I wonder what's going to come out of this one.
It's here, so I'm really
All right. Okay.
interested in
Well,
what's going
give
to
us your
happen.
point of view then, while we allow tape itself.
Well, I'm graduating right now in digitalization with Huusmeer Jochem. We're talking about how could technology and the digital realm have an impact on architectural design and the architectural practices like as a whole. It's a really big theme, and we've, as a graduating studio, found out that it's like too big to even tackle as a group in like, what was it, 4 months? There are like a lot of questions and still a lot of hypotheses that we had to formulate to actually get somewhere. And it's because the issue is so complex, but it will have such a big influence on the way that we design and we actually also use spaces that I think it's a really relevant thing to think about in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, also digitalization also has to do a lot about building physics, but also it is really broad actually about the spectrum, because it brings up a lot of new technological advancements that are also important for all the different disciplines. So I think it's a really broad theme that also has to do something about building production and also about the circularity part. I think it's...
Yes, as I said, these themes are very much overlapping and interlinked. You can't, you can distinguish them, but you can't really separate them very usefully, right? Yep. Good point.
I completely agree with Stephen. I'm also currently graduating on a digitalization topic, so might be a bit skewed there as well in my my objectiveness, but it will really form the way we work with all the other topics.
Wow.
It's all links back to digitalization, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, I think that sustainability is first and by far, and I think that's because you can't really go around it anymore.
No.
Every single course there's a part about sustainability, and just to come back, what can be improved, please skip it in some courses. It's all the same in every course, almost the same. But there's no way around it. It's very important. But the other parts are, yeah, they're all linked together. I should say, yeah.
But I like the fact that you're saying from, be careful of repetition here, because there's too much of the same information being processed. That's a very important point, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I also think that the sustainability is first, especially also now looking not only at our education, but also further in the Netherlands. I believe Nijmegen now has a mandatory course for all their students about sustainability. So I really think that is something maybe not, that is not from the level of our department, but for the university more. But if the university does not do it for our department, to make sure that everyone has like somewhat of sustainability in their study, and that there really is an attention to it, and how and also more that how can you apply that to your direction, because for some directions it's really clear, but for the others it is way more vague on how to really act upon sustainability. And also, furthermore, I also agree with Dennis and Stephen that the digitalization is also a really big and important part.
Yeah. And how should we organize it? I mean, I hear you say sustainability is in everything, so leave it out of some, but you could also think of it in a different way, that we say let's call this course sustainability and see what disciplines need to be represented in it. And that would be one way of actually taking out some of the repetition, right? Because that would give everybody the chance to do their thing under one umbrella. but do their disciplinary thing under that umbrella, maybe.
Or maybe like what I would also like, because I think also sustainability is really something that you also learn in projects. Maybe, for example, have like one of the second year projects for all directions tackle sustainability.
Yeah.
So that you all work at it on the same time, but from your different
from your own perspective. Yeah. That's a lovely idea too. Yes, yeah, that's great.
Course at in the same quarter about it.
Yeah,
maybe.
Yeah.
And the projects and the courses are interlinked as well.
And then and then you indeed have this basic like knowledge for everyone. So that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, fun.
In terms of ranking these themes, I don't really think there's actually much of a point of actually ranking them like this is most important, because they obviously all are kind of equally important, because as we learn at this department, the built environment is an area where holistic design is very important. And from that point of view, it's not possible to leave any of these themes out without any of them really, or with one of them being rated lower than the other. It would not be possible to come to a circular, sustainable, digital, inclusive, well-produced and climate neutral built environment, really. Yeah. So it's not really a matter of ordering them, but making sure that all of them are brought to the students.
How to organize that? That's quite a challenge, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you're completely right. It's music to my ear what you're saying. Absolutely. Yeah, we want a holistic approach. At the same time, we have to also prioritize either in terms of importance or in terms of urgency. You chose to see this ranking as a ranking in terms of importance. Perhaps it's also a ranking in terms of urgency, which is not quite the same thing. But you are right. You are right. Yep. Great.
Yeah.
What shall we do? Do we go on to the next, or does anybody else have anything to say about this?
Well, maybe we could just keep brainstorming a little longer, since otherwise it's quite a short question. It was not that bad, but right now we're scratching our heads a lot on this topic. Like how are we going to fit it into the curriculum? When are we going to fit it in? It's something that the themes really use it in the first year to introduce all the topics and the themes, and then take a step back and digging deeper into our disciplines, or is it something that you do it once you have like all your knowledge from your own discipline? How do you see that working?
I think there is going to be a question about this, so we could save that discussion for that particular, because the way you formulated it is perfect, and I think perhaps we should save it for that slide.
Okay, then let it bubble in your head.
Yeah, let it bubble in your head, because
I gave you a little taste.
Yeah, absolutely. But perhaps let's go on to the next present. And you see, and that's the slide I wanted that this thing is relevant for. What should be the leading principle in redesigning the curriculum? Should it be the flagship themes? And if so, how? Or should it be disciplinary depth? And if so, how does it deal with the themes? Or is there maybe something we're missing completely, and we should have a completely different leading theme? If you think that, please let us know what you think it should be. But at the moment, we are really, as Caitlin rightly said, we're really struggling with how we get those urgent societal themes in our consciousness without overlap and repetition, without sort of all the redundancy that often brings if we just leave it up to the teachers themselves to do. Because as we say, we know least about our curriculum. You know most about our curriculum. So when we talk about sustainability, we think we're being brilliant. And you guys are saying, oh, guy, here he goes again. You know, this is the fifth chap I've heard say the same thing. So that is a real issue, and it's a real struggle.
Maybe you could define quickly again what is meant by disciplinary depth and flagship themes for the people that don't quite see the difference.
Thank you, Caitlin. Yes, just for the sake of clarity, then, disciplinary depth means I'm going to become a good architect, I'm going to become a good urban designer, a good planner, a good real estate manager, a good CME person, a good this or a good that. That's disciplinary depth. And it means that if we take that as the leading theme, right, we say to the units, you're in the lead. You get a portion of the curriculum, which we will organize in such and such a way, and you can do what you like when you want to. The wonderful thing about that is that you indeed give your trust to those people who deserve your trust, namely those people who really know what they're doing and they're going to do wonderful courses. The disadvantage of it is that you get that incidental use of themes. Everybody thinks sustainability is important. Everybody will mention it, but that does mean that everybody will be essentially repeating each other. The other way would be to say, well, no, let's indeed do what you suggested. No, one of you suggested is that you say, take one quartile and do everything under the auspices of a flagship theme. So that we say quartile 4 of the second year is going to be our sustainability quartile. And whatever subject you do there, whatever project you do there, will be so designed as to deal very specifically with that topic. Another way of doing it might be to say well, no, that's too intensive. What we want to do is we want to get each discipline to make explicit a particular theme, right? So we say architecture, you have to have at least one project that deals with sustainability and at least one project that deals with inclusion, all right? And then you do that in that quartile, and in the next quartile, USRI does something about inclusion and something else about sustainability in that quartile. So people who are interested in the theme can say, okay, this quartile I'm going to do architecture, and that quartile I'm going to do USRE. You see, and then you would get those sort of people who say, well, I'm not really sure that I want to become an architect. I'm finding myself here, but what I'm absolutely sure about is that I'm interested in inclusion or sustainability. That would be one way. But maybe there are other ways. You guys are much more creative than I am. So please come up with possibilities of combining these two things, because it's so difficult.
Can I start?
Yes, go for it.
Actually, the division that is on screen right now would be perfect. 6 to 10.
And what does that mean?
Yeah, I will explain.
All right. Okay, cool.
All right. So what I imagine and what we've been talking about is like, okay, we have these big challenges as the built environment, and our challenge is to bring out engineers and architects and people that really know their stuff, and also to bring out people that can keep a helicopter view. And in order to achieve that, it's necessary that everybody is first on the same base. So we have to make sure that everybody knows what sustainability is about, and there's no reason to repeat that 3 times throughout the bachelor. So what I would suggest is that actually we put the themes first, and make sure that we are all on level ground and we understand the challenges that every discipline is facing. And after that, because we know the challenges really well, it's also possible to make a very educated choice between which discipline or which interdisciplinary plane between some disciplines would be suitable for your interests, because you have seen all these different challenges and you know after that, hopefully, where your interest lies. So then it would be possible to then really get into that disciplinary depth without being burdened by other courses or by repetition of different parts of the themes.
I rather like that. So you're essentially saying, do the themes in first year and let the disciplines get on with it in the rest.
Exactly. Yeah.
I wanted to say the same thing.
Oh.
Yeah. So
all of you want to say the same thing? Dennis, you don't. What do you want to say?
I think that in the second year you can also offer coherent packages in a flagship theme direction. So not only in disciplinary directions, but if someone says, yeah, I really want to learn more about sustainability and I want to learn it about structural design sustainability, building physics sustainability, and architecture sustainability, make that a coherent package in which they can follow the sustainability courses.
Okay, that's an
Brett,
idea.
yes, you want to
That's an
do-
idea.
I don't know exactly about that, but I think it's important that everyone knows the flagship themes and indeed that they don't need repetition throughout your bachelor. But I also think, like, from a disciplinary depth, I think that would be the main focus, and then have flagship themes as like instead, or begin with it, or like as a side focus. I don't think you want to choose one or the other. It needs to be a combination, but you also know your own disciplinary depth through the flagship themes, because you then experience, for example, in real estate or something, what sustainability actually implies for you. So
Yes. Yeah.
you need the combination. I'm a fan of what Gijs said, but I'm also curious about what, for example, Dennis has to say about it.
If we assume that we have a system like Gijs mentioned, where we do the flagship themes in the first year, I'm really doubting what would distinguish our first year, the first year of our studies, from, for example, a study sustainable innovation, where we have more a generic approach to these aspects. And I think especially the first year is one of the most essential years where people actually decide, hey, do I like what I'm doing? And by not providing students with that disciplinary depth in that context, I think a lot of people that do not really feel the relation with those flagship themes, that actually want to be a good structural engineer and focus on that because I like steel. No, but it sounds quite stupid. But there are people like that, and I think you don't want to miss out on those people. Yeah. I think they're very relevant for the built environment in the more the research side events, like the non-applicable research. I forgot the proper name for it.
Fundamental research. Yeah,
the fundamental research. I think we need those people to solve these challenges, and if we lose out on them early on, I think that's a massive waste.
Can I ask you a question? Because then, do you see when you have like the flagship themes in the first year that is like all you get, or is there a possibility? Maybe it's also more a question for Jacob, that it's like part of a course, but it's not the whole course. That there's a focus. For example, you have a structural design course like statics that focuses on one of the flagships.
Yeah. Well, what you could do is you could do your disciplinary depth, but always make sure that you take cases and examples from one of the flagship themes.
Yeah, and for example, in the first year, have like the general explanation in some courses what that flagship themes includes.
Yeah, yeah. No, good point. Now I see that one person has said neither, something else. I'm so curious as to what that one person thinks.
Yeah. Maybe for if the person's not here in the room, I don't think so. Write it in the chat and then we can get back to it. Maybe we should move on to the next question.
All right, let's move on to the next one.
Or yes.
But what found really, I think what's funny about the TUE when you come here, there's like you're going to study here and solve big world problems because that's why you're studying.
Yeah.
And I think it's really relevant because also in a discipline, I think it's a bit naive to think that you're becoming a really good architect, so you're going in depth in a discipline. But when you're working in a discipline, you're going to be challenged with those challenges that you actually formulate. So I think it's really relevant to already have them while you're studying here. But the only thing is then that the university needs always to be critical or critique themselves about, are these themes still relevant? About what's going to be there in like 6 years, because that's when these people will be graduating, for instance.
Well, this is music to the ears of some members of our faculty who believe exactly that. They say it's not a good idea to appoint professors on the basis of a theme, because that theme will change in a few years' time. But there are others say from, that may be so, but this theme is incredibly important at this moment. So again, there too, you get the one side and the other side of the argument, and they both provide very good reasoning for
yes, I think there should be a balance in that. And I also like what you were saying about this project, that not in one quarter it's everything, but that if you do it like that, like the A project, for instance, on sustainability is in quartile 2, and from USRE is in quartile 3, you actually give all the students a way to go. If you want to follow the sustainability track, you can switch between this project and have this line. But if you're only doing A projects, you also get all the themes. So I think that would be a good kind of first setup of how to tackle that problem.
Maybe.
Because you give flexibility to both sides. I think that's really valuable to do.
Okay, good stuff.
I agree on that one. I think it's the projects in itself, or the challenge-based learning courses or projects, are really nice opportunities to tackle into these flagship themes. But the regular explanatory courses should really focus on the disciplinary depth aspect. Yeah.
Leonie,
All
did
right,
you just have something to add, or no? Okay. Okay.
I'm going to move on to the next question. That's the penultimate question, I think.
Yes.
So just again, a short question. There is somebody who becomes an expert in a chosen discipline, and a binder is an expert in one of the themes. And it'd be quite interesting to see how people would divide themselves. There is at least one digger in the audience, and that's good. Oh, there's 2 diggers now. Yeah. Oh, there's also a binder. But there you go. You see, I mean, this question, the reason why this is interesting to us is precisely that. You know, what are we actually talking about? How many people would we be servicing doing one thing or the other? And that's why this question is of interest. It is interesting that the diggers are leading the house at this moment.
So, stupidly, I think we're all diggers. Yes, no, I really think. Let me explain why. We are specializing.
Yes.
And by specializing, you're becoming a digger.
Yeah.
So by choosing to study the built environment instead of something else, you'll start that digging process.
Yeah, well, we could have vertical diggers and horizontal diggers. We could have the tunnelers and the well makers. Yeah. No, you're completely right, and that's why I called both experts.
Yeah.
Notice that I said it's not that one is the expert and the other is not. No, indeed, you're completely right. The binder is also a kind of digger, and the digger is undoubtedly also a kind of binder. No. But interestingly enough, we have a beautiful 1-to-2 relationship there, which is an octave for those of you who like music. And that I think is a good one. All right, well, I mean, we may have left a lot out, but one thing I did not want to leave out is this question. What do you value in a teacher and tutor? And think about this carefully. I've asked you to put down 3 core words in the word cloud that this is going to create. And please take it seriously, because we are struggling with that too. For example, our university has had a long time of wanting to become a mature university by promoting research. As a result of that, the balance between teaching and research has been lost sight of slightly. And in some areas, people even look down a little bit on teaching. They say, oh, I'm a researcher, you know, for goodness sake, I don't teach. The worst thing possible is that some people even think I don't want to teach the bachelor, I just want to teach serious students. You know, I want to teach the master's students. Bachelor, boring. Terrible thing. And yet it is also completely understandable, because some of the recognition and reward systems that we use in this university actually support those attitudes, you know. For example, to get your teaching qualification here, you can't even participate in a large-scale biostudio project because it just doesn't count. It just doesn't count towards your qualification as a teacher. We can understand why, because you only do such a small bit within a very big project. So what have you designed? What have you done? But that gives the wrong message, right? Similarly, tenure trackers, people with a full-time employment here with a contract, are tenured in order to do research. For some of them, that means that they don't want to do any teaching at all, right? So that's a very complicated thing. So I think we really need to know what you value in a good teacher, so that we can also think from, well, your qualification should reflect those qualities. Your contract should reflect those qualities, in the sense that when you teach here, you are expected to have these qualities. So it's an important thing. So I'm very grateful, those of you who are online, that you are obviously thinking about this quite carefully. Yes.
I think personally that the departmental board, by looking into the implementation of the PI system, which will obviously sound unfamiliar to a lot of people, is actually solving this problem.
I hope so.
And
let me just explain. The PI system is what we call the principal investigator system, which means that researchers, specifically researchers, not teachers, get full accountability and full responsibility for their own funds. So if you manage to get a huge NVO grant to do research, then you also get the responsibility and the accountability for that amount of money. And what we're trying to do here is actually see if it's also possible to implement something a little similar on the basis of your educational income. That's quite hard, but with that explanation, maybe you can go further and explain your point.
Yeah, by basically allowing people to do what they're passionate, where their passion lays, where they're interested in, like a true academic that isn't really into teaching, and saying like, okay, you know what, I'm going to focus on this research, and we have some small people in a group working together on that topic, and someone else is in that group that is really passionate about teaching and can explain that topic, because I mean it's all about those topics really well to the students. Why not facilitate being able to do that? So
Absolutely.
Why not? Yeah, I think there are quite some teachers or researchers on our department that are really good at teaching and really enjoy doing it, and they're motivated, they're interested, they know a lot about that topic, and I think that are the core qualities of being a good teacher, enjoying it.
But I'll be honest with you. You see, that's the point. There are some people within our faculty who are particularly good at teaching and not very good or not very interested in research. Their development is hampered, whereas those people who are good at research but no good at teaching or do not want to teach end up as at the highest levels of our organization. Now, is that fair? And that is one of the questions the university as a whole is struggling with, and we're trying to address it, which is a good thing, but it does need to be addressed.
Yes.
No. So it's a good point there. Well done. Thank you. Well, these are some useful comments here. Caitlin, we've come to the end of the questions.
Yeah, unless someone has something very pressing to add on the question that's still on the screen now.
I want something to.
Yes.
Yeah. I think for me in general, a teacher is someone who is honest with me and is motivated to be honest with me, and is also not gonna give me, how do I explain this properly? For example, I've had a couple of times that I felt like I was graded lower than my peers. And there once was a teacher who explained to me, I'm not going to grade you higher because it's not going to motivate you to go beyond what you are doing right now. And that really motivated me to stay on my own level and to not always compare me to everyone to everyone else. It was really something for me that motivated me to stay in my own process and to learn how to grow instead of, okay, I'm now at the level as everyone else, so I stop. So I'm good. So I think that is really important to me, that the teacher is really honest with me and that they also are not biased. So I've also had experience with tutors that, for example, had a little bit more background in a certain direction and that they graded me in that direction while it was not such a course or such a project. And I think if I'm doing a project, for example, in a BPS direction, I want to be graded in a BPS direction because that's going to motivate me to become better. So I think those are really two things, and I really, really appreciate the teachers that love to teach in general. I feel like that's something we really need to stimulate a bit more on this TUE, because those are really the people that help you through your studies and also the people that will stay on your mind when you're a professional in the field later on.
Mm.
I think that is a very nice closing note. Again,
Yes.
then to thank everyone that came here. Again, thank you to the teachers that you make your time, freed up some time in your agenda to listen to us and to offer feedback through the chat. I've been reading through those as well. That really shows that indeed teachers here really care about developing as a university and having their students develop as well. And that's lovely to see. Yeah, we had quite a lot of deep discussions and on a lot of questions, and I'm sure a lot of people maybe at home are still sitting here, maybe wants to add a bit more to what they said, especially since now you're still in the whole process of answering all those questions. And so I have the perfect solution for that. I have a survey and I've sent it now in the chat. So if there's anything you want to elaborate more of what you've said now, or if you think, oh, I really agree with this person, but I think I could add this. I put all the questions that we discussed and a few more that are related to the questions as we discussed. They're not all obligatory, so you can just skip the ones you think, yeah, I think it's been said well enough. But please take a look at it. That would help us a lot. And so that's yeah, that I really very happy to see everyone that came here, and I'm looking forward to implementing your opinions into the new curriculum.
Absolutely. And this is
Us to
yeah.
give us our opinions on this very, very important topic. So thanks for that. Thanks for the organization.
Yeah.
And thank you. I feel quite humbled by what happened this afternoon. You were very open with me, and I'm sure that I'm speaking for the other teachers who have been quietly listening in the background. Have you noticed they were there? They were there. They're listening very, very, very attentively. I'm sure, because what you've said has been very useful. And as I said, I think I agree with you. I think honesty is the greatest virtue here. So please, you guys, be honest with us. If we don't do it right, have the courage to tell us, and have the generosity to receive help from us when you need that help. And take good care of yourselves. And what we're going to do now is we're going to use this stuff in our further discussions with the revamp group. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to, on the 25th of January, I'm going to invite all the staff members of the faculty to begin the redesign process. I'm going to get lots of teams going. They're going to be flagship theme teams. There are going to be disciplinary teams, obviously represented by the various units that we have. They're going to they're going to acquire exactly the same kingdom as I've given you lot, and they're going to spend a couple of months playing around with ideas in a very divergent way. And the nice thing is that there are people from each unit represented here in this afternoon. So they're there. They will have heard what you've said. They will have read what you've written. And they will be fed with further input that you make. And what I'm going to very much encourage all these various teams to do is to explicitly involve one or other students in the deliberations that they're going to undertake. That all the units and all the teams take students along in the process and have them as a sounding board for their ideas. So you're not finished with me yet.
Yeah, so please keep an eye out for that. And just one more thing, loose from the whole bachelor revision. It was nice to see that everyone has a lot of feedback to give, and you can see that teachers really do appreciate that. So just as a general note for all students, use that our teachers are such open for feedback. Come to our committees that do course evaluations, or come to us study associations for the units or for the whole of the built environment. And we gladly want to go into conversation with teachers, and we know that they really appreciate it too. So you don't have to wait for events like this to let yourself be heard. But I think enough said.
Well,
Thank you.
Not quite. Thank you, Caitlin, for leading this session, and thank you, technical staff
Yes.
who are behind all the cameras for doing all their fantastic technology wizardry.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Well
Great
done.
work. Yeah. Have a nice day, everyone.
Okay. Bye-bye.